Hello everybody, welcome back to the Rook View. Today I want to talk about 200cc. So, since it came out on 8U, I always had the opinion that 200cc was not my favorite mode in the game. However, I like its inclusion. It added more to a game that was pretty light on content to begin with, and with the other DLC, it helped MK8, especially Deluxe, to become possibly the most completely MK game to date. Adding time trials for 200cc was a really nice gift for the game as well. So, I recently played a lot of 200cc. They have a lounge, and I decided that I would hop in and try it out since I haven't played for a while. And I feel that before I ramble about my opinions on 200cc, I felt like that before that I should pick up the mode again and play and evaluate it based on recent memory instead of like over a year ago, because I'm gonna do a quick analysis on what I think the mode is good for, and I think that I need to have it fresh in my memory banks to be able to convey a good message. So I played it actively for about a month or so. I kind of stopped a week and a half ago, and I managed to get to diamond ranks in the 200 lounge. So hopefully I have some credibility on my judgment on how the mode plays. I've left it and some other servers for now due to me being a little overwhelmed with school and everyday work, but if you want the link to the 200 lounge, I'm sure Nick will be somewhere in the comments and I'll probably post it. He probably just paused the video to do so, and if he hasn't, he definitely is now to post the link, so you'll find it in the description most likely. Anyways, the synopsis of my opinion is that it's a fun mode, but not something I would choose to play over 150cc seriously. Regardless, I'd like to provide a critical analysis because there are some positive aspects I do like about the mode personally. So, first things first, I feel like the lag is noticeably worse, at least as far as lag trailing goes, and that's a pretty big turnoff for me to begin with. From what I've noticed of lag trails, and I pointed it out in an extra tips for the game video I made a little back, I believe that braking generally makes getting hit by lag trails like easier because you appear on the other person's screen to slow down, and a lot of times into their item, or they can manipulate it so you go into their item. So sometimes even if it looks like you're going to hit it on your screen, I think if you're actually ahead of them on theirs, and perhaps you shouldn't worry if you like make contact with a green shell but don't get hit. But I think this gets amplified in 200cc because braking is much more useful in general, and it's something that a good pack player should be abusing every race in this mode. Braking in general sounds really good in theory for 200cc, but I think it leads a lot to some problems with lag, especially online. It's true that it probably leads to more lag trails covering even further distances than 150cc, and what you also have to consider is that braking causes more bumps to begin with, and bumps are pretty annoying online to deal with because they kind of have a random nature. So there are many turns in the game where you need to brake, or many moments online that should lead to braking as well, especially in 200. So when you brake so much and at different times than other players, it increases the amount of bumps in a match, because people who brake will be caught up to a lot of the time by the people who do not brake, and it causes many high-speed collisions. So managing what happens in these collisions is a hefty skill to have in 200cc, I've noticed, because they happen a lot. People will brake, you run into them because they're braking, and a lot of the times it causes bumps, and you know that in 200cc a single bump can be very detrimental, and fails sometimes cost you more in 200 than they would in 150, for example. So one thing I've noticed is that I believe that people who need to brake less are generally more skilled at the mode, because when you don't have to brake as much, you just brake away. So just taking good lines where you don't have to brake unless you absolutely need to be faster is generally better, just straight up. So I think when other people brake in turns where you don't need to, with everybody's different timing, it causes a bit of a mess at times. So one positive for the mode is that the driving is more entertaining than it is in 150cc. I don't think you can really debate that either. So, and honestly, like near the end of 8U's life, I kind of had this opinion as well, but people didn't really care at all or just neglected it because like everybody praised 8U's driving and 150. It was fun for a while to me, but 200 was always interesting because it really does test your flexibility and provide some new strats that completely change the track. So without the tech in 8U in this game, I really don't see how people can claim that 150's driving is more interesting, but I guess it is an opinion. To me, the selling point of 150cc is that it's more focused on the use of items and sometimes even being clever with them, and 200, at least from the matches I've played, I feel like it is more focused on driving skill, and item use feels more like a wish or a prayer. In a way, 150cc is kind of like to chess as 200cc is to speed chess. It's the same game at the end of the day, but while one mode is more calculated and optimized, the other is more of a rush and has some heavy mistakes being made almost every single match. To me, it's kind of funny how people emphasize how fast they are in this game, though, and brag about it, but they still play 150cc, and I really feel like that's pretty easy to pick up lines on 150cc, and the game is more item-centric to begin with, so in 200cc, at least in its current state, it is a little more line-focused, I won't lie, but you know, that doesn't necessarily create a better metagame, at least for me. One thing that's cool about the mode difference is how some tracks can change, as I mentioned though. So like Yoshi Circuit in 150cc, for example, is a pretty hard bagging track. People will always be like 3/4 a lap behind on lap 1. On 200cc though, the cut at the beginning becomes a part of your driving in the first place. It weakens the shrooms, especially when using shrooms there, makes the cut a bit more wild. Combined with the tight turns on this track in 200, this track becomes a lot more of a running styled course in 200, whereas in 150 it's a bagging mess at times. This is just one example, but it is kind of interesting how different tracks can be with a different mode. So I said that front running was kind of buffed in 200cc, but I think there's a reason to this more than like just the mode itself, and I think it's kind of because the meta is like underdeveloped right now compared to 150. And when I've played, like when you play new MK games, like the best runners are generally the best players, at least for like the first week or so. When I've played 200, I found that really only a handful of people are what I would consider to be capable front runners. It's pretty easy to mess up in dire ways in 200, and as a result, it generally makes packs a bit wider than 150. Each fail you make costs you more in 200 than it does in 150, and it can make coming back a bit more difficult. From what I've noticed, even in higher level matches, the shock felt much more common on tracks that aren't well-known bagging tracks in 200. I think that's because failing is easier and more costly in this mode, and when people are in a cluster in the middle of the pack and get hit by items, first gains time, of course, and this is also amplified in 200, so I don't think I'm really great at running, and I think running is great on 200, but if you're going to survive in the pack, what was able to help me is, even in higher skill level rooms, I felt that people use their items in really predictable and obvious ways. It's possible to state that maybe people have less time to make good decisions, but I still think that general improvement in this area could go a long way in shaping how the metagame in 200cc looks like. I found that dodging up in 200cc is easier than it is in 150cc. Because you're faster, you can access more items more quickly. Stars last the same length in 200 if I'm not mistaken, so they take up more distance than they would otherwise, and they can be changed into another box more quickly. So combine that with many more people naturally driving in the back after they have catastrophic fails, and it makes shock and dodge windows even higher. So to me, I felt that spacing out dodges and judging when someone had it was pretty easy, and with less time to use a shock every race, like if somebody gets shock, they kind of need to use it quickly because the race is going to be over faster. So I think it's generally really predictable when you had a shock dodge opportunity. During my time actively playing the lounge, a lot of people called me lucky because I dodged a lot, and especially initially when I had just first started getting active, but I found that dodging was pretty consistently working, and the only thing that tells me really is that people weren't using this, or they weren't used to like using dodging to their advantage. And that only furthers my point that the metagame's not really developed as far as 150 because people aren't used to different playstyles, I guess. So perhaps my luck wasn't just chance but actual strategy. People started to accept it a little more down the road, that it was kind of why I could like do well in rooms with people who were better drivers than me, even if they would generally be more consistent and win more. The meta is still developing, really, and if I had to give advice to mid-level players, it's this: like, if you don't get into first, like if running isn't working out for you should focus on making a more calculated comeback than just trying to get back into first. Get some coins, get some good items, and find a way back. That is going to be a lasting effect and not just going to result in you getting hit again. So all the time I settled for third, fourth, or fifth because the top two was just gone in this mode, but you know, consistently getting third or fourth is usually enough to win a free-for-all event. So the big question at the end of the day is 200cc worth playing? And the answer is absolutely, but you got to keep in mind that each person is different and has different tastes. So people aren't wrong if they prefer one mode to the other, but there are some things that should be understood. Like top level 150 play is more developed than 200 right now. There's more strategy. It's more rewarding in my opinion. And besides my opinion at the end there, like it's an objective fact that more people play 150 right now. It's more developed. But you also gotta realize that there's a lot left to discover playing 200 and a lot of room to improve and find new strategies. I highly encourage checking up both modes if you have any interest in both. I'm not active at 200, but I did like it more than I expected just giving it a chance. So while I prefer 150, the mode is fun and I'm glad it's a part of the game. There are some game mechanics that I take advantage of more in 200 that I don't really use much in 150. Like I use airborne drifts much more frequently in 200 to adjust. And there are certain tracks I like way more in 200cc, like Goldmine, a track that I don't really play at all in 150. So personally, while I don't prefer the mode to 150, I think it's a big tragic that a ton of the community didn't even give it a chance. I tried to give it a chance when it came out, but I was kind of focused on getting better at 150, so I came back to it. In 8U, there were always excuses, like the tech makes 150 more skill-based, and 200cc TTs don't exist, and so on. And those don't even exist anymore, but you know, nothing really changed in who plays what. So I understand like the mode has problems. I still think it's really laggy, and I hate that item spam kind of doesn't feel reactable in many situations. It sometimes feels like item spam is optimal, and certainly it probably is more optimal than 150, but I think that the reason we feel like it's so good is because the mode hasn't had mini wars to develop. People default to strategies unless they're told that they're bad and they think about why they're bad. And perhaps you may think that item spam is broken in 200 because you lose to people who do it, but it's possible that you just aren't as good at running, so you get hit by all these items, and that's why. It's not that you aren't playing optimally, it's just that you aren't really fast enough yet to compete in the higher level games. At the end of the day, I have my preferences, but I think it's really sad that many haven't even tried to play 200 in this game over a year and almost a half after release. Not even once played like a war or something. Without trying it, it really makes us no different than like the MKW players who wouldn't even try Deluxe because they assumed it's 8U with battle mode. And you know, by try, I mean really try too, not just like 5 hours on Worldwide over the course of like a month. I think really if you want to analyze a mode and have a valid opinion on the metagame, you need to spend like at least 50 hours making an honest effort on it. That's just my personal opinion. So to close this video, I'd like to challenge the 200cc players watching. Right now 200 has less events than 150, and while on MKC we host more events on 150 right now, we have to recognize that it is the larger player base and thus deserves more events. But there are ways to change that, and it starts with the players. If you want more events for 200, you need to show it instead of waiting for something to just happen. You need to provide good attendance numbers when you do get the opportunities to find ways to help grow the player base. Only then will the mode start to prosper. Like start making some guides, maybe like I know Nick made like the save 200 lines. Maybe find some stuff like that 150 does and try to emulate it at times. 200L is a good start. We'll see how that goes from here. This really goes for any game. We can sit around hopeless that our community will never grow, and if we believe that, then it really will be like that. And we need people to step up and make an effort to improve our tournaments, whether it be to help out a single mode, a single tournament, or the community at large. So simply try to be that change, and perhaps there will be good things to come. So that's all for today. Thanks for watching. If you want the TLDR, I guess, or TLDW, I guess, I prefer 150. I think it's always going to be that way, but you know, 200 was fun. It's special, and I'm glad it's in the game because it provides more to do, I guess, with the game. It makes the game's value even higher for me. It's cool for me to get to use Villager and get to say that he's like actually like kind of good. You know, Villager is the best character in 200, of course, because he doesn't make a noise when he throws his items, making item spam even better with Villager. Keep that in mind. So yeah, that's all I have for today. Thanks for watching, everybody. Perhaps I'll play some 200 matches in the future. We'll see. Want to talk about Battle eventually also, but that's all I have for now. So thanks for watching as usual, and I will see you next time, and hopefully sooner than I've been producing these, but we will see. Thank you, guys.